Hello, my name is Maya Moore. I'm the master artist and educator here at the Microblading Institute. And today I'm going to be answering your questions about ombre brows. So let's get to it. So what device do I use? I currently use several devices. They have different purposes, but for ombre, I really like the Microbute Zion S is what it's called. The Microbute Zion S. It's a really great machine, very versatile. You can really customize it to your own hand. However, you could have a heavy hand, you could have a soft hand, so you can make adjustments within the machine to make the settings harder or softer depending on how your own body movements are and your own hand moves. So I like the customization aspect of it. So I use the Zion, and they also have a really great, it's called Critical Atom, and it is the power source. So it's a very stable power source. So that's what I use. The Zion S by Microbute and the Critical Supply, the Critical Atom Supply that they also retail. Question number 2. What needles are best to use for shading? That's a really good question. The debate is still out on that. It really depends on the artist's work that you like. So for me, I tend to use a number 1, which is a number 1 round liner. I use that a lot. It doesn't have any resistance, so you do have to be careful because you can tear and rip the skin very easily. But you are only using a very, very small amount of the needle, and it takes practice, but you have to be very careful with the way that you use the needle. But that needle creates amazing pixelation and a really beautiful, soft, powdery look to the eyebrows. The larger the configuration of needles, so there are 3 rounds and there's a 5 round, there are 5 shaders, there are 5 flat magnums and 9s, and the list goes on and on. But I feel like the larger the configuration of needle, the heavier the saturation of the eyebrow is. And if you're wanting something more of like a traditional eyebrow, permanent makeup eyebrow where it looks more filled in, then you can use one of those larger configurations. You would not want to use a number 1 because that'll take you a lifetime to fill. But if you're wanting that really soft pixelated powder effect or ombre effect, the 1 round, or which is like a single needle, or the 3 round liner is those are the best choices. But the 1 is like amazing. You just have to be careful not to overwork the brow. Okay. Question number 3. Why is ombre the best technique for oily skin? That's another really amazing question. So it's not that it's the best technique. I just think any technique where you're using a machine is going to be better if you have oily skin. And the reason is because when you use manual methods, you're using a hand tool and you're dipping that hand tool, the blade of that hand tool, into pigment, and then you are scratching the surface of the skin, and that is how you're implanting pigment. Now, if a person has oily skin and you're using pigments that have glycerin and different components in them, the pigments can often be absorbed by the oil that is naturally occurring in the person's skin. So oil and oil absorbs, right? Oil and waters repel. So over time, the oil will absorb the color. And so you get a lot of fading with microblading when you're using, or any type of manual method. It could be manual shading or manual hair strokes. But because of the way the pigment is implanted in the skin, you tend to get more fading, more premature fading. Now with the machine, the machine is tapping pigment into the skin at a very, very fast rate. So depending on what speed you put it on, and the type of machines that you use, like digital machines, it could be like 120 points per second of pigment going into the skin, and different levels depending on the different machines again. So that dotting that is happening, it's implanting tons and tons of pigment into the skin versus one cut. You got one opportunity to make sure that that pigment gets in there versus all these pixelated dots happening all over. You have more saturation of color in the skin. So over time, even though your oil or oily skin will cause absorption of the pigment, you'll see the color longer because it's packed into the skin differently than it is manually. So it survives a lot longer. So it is a better choice. Any machine method is always going to survive longer in oily skin than a manual method. Okay. So for me, I have a lot of oily skin clients, combination skin clients. I service all types of women. And if you are that type of artist as well, you see a lot of clients, sometimes your retention is not always the best with your manual microblading techniques or your manual shading. You really should think about taking an ombre class. Machine ombre, it's a phenomenal technique. It services a whole new clientele base for you. And I offer a really amazing ombre class where we teach various techniques, all the latest trends, and as well as color saturation and pigment choice and all of that. So ombre is really important if you are out there and you are wondering if you should get into that.